So when I started at thoughtbot a couple of years ago almost, I was excited. Not about working with any of you, but because the company was headquartered in Boston and I'm a Red Sox fan, and so I thought, this is going to be great. Like, I'm going to have the opportunity to talk with dozens of people who are Red Sox fans. This is not something that I get to do in Texas very often. So I think maybe the first or second thing I did on my first day was get into Slack, go into the sports room, and begin writing my resignation letter, because it was just not what I was expecting. It was a ghost town, basically. Interstitial lightning talk, by the way, most obscure Slack room that we have, I'm going to say it's home decorating. Does anybody have any other nominations?
Bad TV.
Bad TV?
Bad TV.
Home decorating, though, like, have y'all been into home decorating? I think what we need to do, let's all of us go into home decorating and put a little bit of time into it. Just see what we get. I think that you'll be surprised. We can talk about tile, carpet. Anyway, where was I? Resignation letter, yeah. And so that's about what I'm about to read right now. No. You might think that I'm going to come up here and help y'all talk about sports. That's not what I'm here to do. If you don't want to talk about sports, the last thing that I think you should do is attempt to talk about sports. I think that we have all probably been in social situations where you're making small talk with a stranger, and immediately off the bat you recognize, like, I have no common ground with this person. I want this conversation to end as soon as possible. My cup is empty, and this is a nightmare. And what I want to do is enable y'all to gracefully end these conversations without making a negative impact on the person that you're talking to. Like, I don't think anybody wants to say, I have no interest in this topic, and then just turn around and leave, right? Like, you kind of stumble through it and you know, kind of mumble, yeah, sort of act like I'm doing now, and just wait for the opportunity to make your exit gracefully. I think that there's a couple things that we can do to extricate ourselves from these scenarios. Number one, we can accelerate the conversation to its natural point. And the way to do that, I think, is to understand what the sports fan wants out of this conversation. I think that as a non-sports fan, you might think that there is pressure on you in these situations to speak intelligently about sports. Nobody is interested in that. You don't have to do that. You don't have to understand sports or even like sports, I think. Basically, what you have to recognize is that the other person just wants to give you their opinion on whatever conversation they've started. It's called a hot take. And so what we need to do is just reach the hot take as soon as possible. We need to minimize the time in between the beginning of the conversation and the hot take and move on. And so if somebody were to say to you, did you see the game last night? What you need to do, and I think this works in all contexts, is express disbelief. There's virtually no way for the other person to interpret this as not negatively, essentially. What you need to do is, I think, match their emotional level. You'll have to read their body language and see, are they asking you because they're excited about what happened? Are they feeling angry about what happened? And just frame the phrase that I'm going to give you in a way that reciprocates their emotions. And the phrase is, can you believe that? Just say, can you believe that? And that will get them started on whatever they wanted to talk about. So essentially what we're doing is we're taking the ball and we're passing it back to them. That's a sports metaphor. And once with the ball, they're set, and they'll probably go off for a minute or two. And what they're going to do, if it's a negative tone that they're taking, essentially they're going to express some feeling of dissatisfaction with the way the game was officiated or the league or whatever. And essentially what you have to imagine is that you're talking to Donald Trump about something, and this person basically believes the system is rigged, and he has no solutions, nothing. He just wants to get that out of his system. So the next thing to do after they have stated their opinion is to kind of shake your head or just expel some breath out of your mouth. Just go and just like agree with them. At that point, you have satisfied what they need out of this conversation, and it's probably okay to leave. Now, the other thing you can do No, granted, I think what you might see, the problem with this technique is that,
Oh,
are we done?
one more.
Okay.
I'll give you like 30 more seconds.
So there's some holes in this. You're taking a risk because they could ultimately ask you an actual question, and if you're gonna have to find some way of navigating that. So the other thing you can do, if you want to end the conversation immediately, is talk about your fantasy team. And so you might say, Ethan, I don't have a fantasy team. That doesn't matter. Just start talking about it, because the thing is, like, nobody cares about anybody else's fantasy team. So just basically talk about the draft. You need to know what a draft is. Talk about just how badly it went for you. Talk about the waiver wire. What's the waiver wire? It doesn't matter. And that you think you're probably not going to make the playoffs this year. And in the end, I guarantee you, the other person will leave. You'll have turned the tables. You will have the upper hand, and you're free to move on with your life.